What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories. Speaking of horror, if I know we're like past Halloween and stuff, but I've discovered a third-party content thing for D&D called Grim Hollow. This is not a sponsor or anything. I've literally just been reading it over for myself and checking that out for myself, and honestly, I'm kind of hooked. Imagine if D&D on Bloodborne had a beautiful, grotesque child, but it was actually pretty cool. It was just gritty in the most edgiest, darkest, grimmest way possible, but still feeling very D&D. This whole Grim Hollow thing has actually kind of been opening me up to some more spooky stories. I kind of missed out doing some spooky Halloween themed D&D sessions this year, but hey, there's always a next year. And you know what? Who says you have to play it on Halloween to have a spooky time with your friends in D&D? Speaking of horror stories, however, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. My D&D game of 2 years seemingly died silently. So my friends and I, male 17, have been playing D&D together in an online game for nearly 2 years now, spanning 2 different campaigns. We've had about 22-hour sessions in the first campaign and about 6 sessions in the second. The first campaign is the main one we play, and the second is a side campaign I run, which we theoretically could play whenever our main DM is too busy to plan a session. I love both playing and DMing, and have enjoyed both campaigns a ton, but I fear that my feelings aren't shared by the rest of the friends. First of all, about half of them took a really long time to understand the rules, and I feel like they still don't. Example, our rogue learned what sneak attack does, an ability that I always had, in session 16, and our ranger still doesn't seem to fully understand any lingo like armor class or difficulty check. I find this frustrating because I took the time to study and learn all the rules with the first few months, and I still have to explain their own abilities to them far too often. It makes me feel like they don't care about their character abilities and by extension the game itself. Whoa, that's a lot of assumptions to start throwing around, to be honest. Like, yeah, maybe it's not a priority for them to learn the game, but at the same time, maybe it's just they're not as enthusiastic as you, or not as dedicated, or maybe it takes them a bit longer to understand something with a game compared to you. Maybe they don't spend as much time learning about the game. Maybe it's not because they dislike the game or want to insult the game or just be rude to the DM or everybody else playing or whatever. Maybe just time doesn't allow, or they got other stuff going on. I mean, that's a lot of assumptions. Unless you know these people specifically and they said that that's their intention, I wouldn't start throwing accusations just like that. It'd just be a slippery slope. I learned a lot about D&D and I started reading a lot once I kind of got frustrated with the people showing me the ropes, not showing me anything or teaching me anything, and I just got so frustrated, started reading stuff by myself. And that's when I really learned D&D. Back when I was first introduced to it, I think it was 2021, I believe, maybe late 2020, something like that. And for the longest time, I was shown and taught things, but there weren't even any useful, correct things. But I just kind of took them, at face value because I didn't know better. But once I started reading, I started learning a lot more. When I started DMing, I started reading a lot more, learning a lot more, taking experiences from every place I could possibly find to help me DM and play a game and just have a good time. But I have a lot of friends that also came in brand new to the game that also joined that crappy server I talked about as the prop in my own RPG horror story, and they didn't get to learn much either. So when it came time to them joining me and my friends to play together and me DMing and stuff and my friends DMing, they didn't know much to do and they didn't fully understand their abilities. And yeah, some people learn a little slower than others, but it's not because it's not for lack of trying. They're trying. They're doing their very best, trying to understand what they can or can't do, understand the different class mechanics. I even have a rogue character that chose to play arcane tricks, and I had to explain to him how spell works, spell points and stuff like that, and different levels of spells, how to prepare spells, what spells he has available, what features they have available as a rogue as well, what kind of things they could do with cunning action too, because they never played a rogue before. They had no idea. And depending how often they got to play and stuff, sometimes some things would be forgotten, but like over time, they remember it and they retain it and they become really good at playing their character. Everybody learns things at a different speed, a different pace. Some people can get like me, kind of borderline obsessive and like really dissect everything about it, learn at every single opportunity to like nearly try to at least understand the basics of it within a couple of days. And some people it takes a little bit, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of Monica in my life, Maybe for you it's easy to understand when to do sneak attack, but for some of my players, yeah, it was a little bit difficult to trying to figure out when sneak attack actually procs. When can you use sneak attack? How to get sneak attack at any single point? What abilities and features they can use to gain themselves sneak attack? Are there certain things they can do in the battlefield to gain it? What causes disadvantage so they can't sneak attack? Look out for things like that. People learn things along the way. I wouldn't assume the worst out of your players immediately. Secondly, it takes a long time for 2 of them to respond to messages in our group chat. We use the chat to plan sessions, but while most of us respond to relevant messages within a day, 2 members can take an entire week to check in. One of them even needs to be reminded to check their messages while they're at school. Makes me feel like I'm wasting my time trying to schedule sessions when 2 of the players don't even bother to check their phones occasionally. Third, I'm always the one scheduling the sessions. In our group chat, over 90% of the messages asking, "Hey, when is the next session good for you guys?" comes from me. The others hardly ever initiate these discussions. Alright, well, instead of assuming the worst out of your players, let's maybe pretend they're busy. They got other stuff going on. They have different priorities than you. You are very invested in the game. You really want to play. But maybe your friends, they may be busy. They maybe got other stuff going on. Doing something for a family friend or something. Dealing with some nonsense over the weekend. Taking extra hours and stuff like that. Schooling. You know, it can be tiring and exhausting. Maybe they got other priorities at the moment that just don't match yours. And the difference is, maybe you need to look for players to play with if you want to do that. To play with people that have the same kind of availability for D&D and be able to, I don't know, have as much free time as you. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions over you or anything like that. You have a drive to want to play D&D and plan sessions, but your friends probably have different priorities that makes them not check in. It's not because I don't think it's going to be immediately because they just don't care or they want to spite. Maybe they got other stuff going on. I mean, the likelihood of it being they just want to do it to spite you or do something, you know, to piss you off or something will be very highly unlikely. They probably got other shit to deal with. Life throws a lot at you and it's difficult to juggle all of it. Finally, it's obvious they don't care about their characters in my side campaign. Remember that second campaign I mentioned? I originally created to test out running a one-shot. Because of that, I told him to make simple characters, so I didn't expect detailed backstories I could weave into the world. But after the one-shot turned into a 6-shot, I fleshed out the world, adding pantheons, countries, and coalitions. I let them know in the group chat, "Hey, I finally got my world to a good point. If you want to expand your characters' backgrounds, add details, or brainstorm ideas with me, just message me." No one replied. That was 3 months ago. I refused myself from asking the next session is, thinking they just didn't seem interested anymore. Since then, nobody has mentioned the game or a message in the group chat. I guess I wrote this just to get it off my chest. I don't want to play a game where I'm the only one who wants to play. Still, if anyone has advice, I'd really appreciate it. Now that is kind of interesting, and I'm gonna ask you a genuine, honest question in a situation. I want to know for myself. Did you do something to cause them to not want to reply to you by any chance? Like in general self-reflection, right? If they were part of the one shot and did it and stuff like that, and then you fleshed it out, maybe the timing is off. Maybe the timing's off. Maybe you took like a couple of months and then people just forgot to check that specific Discord and stuff to like, or maybe the group chat, right? Or maybe you might have done something specific with, this is just a guess, right? Maybe you behaved in a specific way to your players and to your friends that you play this stuff with in such a way where it kind of turned them off from wanting to engage with playing with you further. I don't want to jump to a conclusion and say you were the asshole here or anything like that, but could have you done something, maybe been a little bit too harsh, maybe be a little bit too hard, a little bit terse. I think terse is the proper term. Maybe, I don't know. Could you have been unwelcoming or unapproachable or kind of unfriendly when you chatted with these people? And maybe they're just not replying out of politeness because they're too polite to leave the group chat or something, but they don't want to leave the group chat to seem rude or anything or hurt your feelings. Or, I mean, there's only other possibility. Maybe they're just genuinely so busy with life and they have different priorities at the moment right now that, of course, it's not okay if they're just leaving you on red or just ghosting you and stuff. It's not okay to do so. But at the same time, I feel like maybe it might be a sign that you need to look for other people that are just as enthusiastic as you are. Maybe they're just not as interested or not as enthusiastic, or maybe they have different priorities right now compared to you. You have priorities towards D&D and you're really excited, and there's nothing wrong with being enthused and excited to try new things. I would definitely take time to self-reflect and see if there's any kind of behavior you've done before in the past that seemed a little bit rough, I guess you could say, or a little bit unfriendly. Maybe there's something you could do better in the future and learn from the experience. But if you generally didn't do anything wrong and there's generally nothing that happened, then maybe just bad timing. Bad time right now for everybody to engage in a session and stuff. I don't know. Either way, I hope you find a group that is just as enthusiastic as you are to try one-shots or homebrew games or modules or whatever it is. I hope you should probably just look for a different group that is more active, honestly. I would say do that. Anyway, next story. I want to play as Rick Sanches and a dull DM. A few years back, I signed up to a local game club near my workplace, close enough that I could swing by there after a shift or two throughout the week. They had booths for groups and different areas for different things, and it was all really well managed. I played a few games there with various people and had a good experience when I saw someone on the club Facebook page recruiting for a game of Eclipse Phase 2. For those who aren't familiar, it's a sci-fi setting. AI destroyed most of humanity in a solar system before disappearing and leaving all sorts of nasty nanoswarms, basilisk hacks, and horrible biomachine hybrids laying about. Humanity is recovering. You can swap bodies by downloading your consciousness from place to place. You could be an uplifted octopus, all the good stuff. I signed up immediately. Session 0 came about and I met the DM and 3 other players. I prepared a wisecracking snake mech merc. One guy was inhabiting a swarm of microbots, one was a digitized consciousness, and last was, well, as he proudly informed us all, he was Rick Sanches from Rick and Morty. Is that his name? The wubba-lubba-dub-dub guy? Really? The Pickle-Rick! God, it's so stupid. I never watched Rick and Morty. People said like, oh, it's so good, it's so genius, and then the memes about high IQ for it came out. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not gonna bother. I feel like it'd just be brain rot. Problem is, it's hard to replicate Rick Sanches at level 1. That and the character is notoriously antisocial and a danger to friends and foes alike. Fortunately, the DM shut down his efforts to wheedle for increased stats so you could have a mastery over all the skills Rick would have, and we managed to work around his character's affectations for the first 2 sessions. He played edgy and arrogant and almost started a fight or 3, but we handled it. But while we were busy handling it, I began to realize there were issues with the DM too. Every enemy hacker had a skill of 120 to 100. We can never counteract or trace them because they possessed a mastery outside of human comprehension. They were using this mastery to make the station's coffee dispenser swear at people. We emailed ourselves from our remote backwater asteroid to Luna. It's faster than flying there, okay? But they conveniently had exact replica of our bodies and gear ready to go. My character had a penchant for switching between various forms, hence his heavily customized mechanical snake body. Considering my surprise when strangers I'd never met before had an identical frame laying around for whoever happened to come along next. Every single fight was against one opponent. I'd make effort to cover our rear, check the flank, position myself to provide covering fire. I wanted to be ambushed, but it never happened. In the final session, we got shot at by the different guns. I was thrilled. I thought there'd been a minimum of 2 opponents. I was wrong. It was 1 robot with 3 arms. So, from what I'm understanding, and this is a lot of terminology that is brand new to me, I've never heard of this TTRPG before whatsoever, but from what I'm assuming, if they have a high skill in hacking, you can never really track them or hack them because basically they were invincible or like way above what players could do. It kind of takes away any sort of fun with that because it basically means, I'm assuming it's basically like, I don't know, an arcana check or something, and you constantly fail because it's just impossible. There's no way to deception, persuasion, insight. Like an insight. If you're trying to do an insight at somebody, the DM lets you roll, but it's always impossible because like deception is always a 30 blank or something like that. I don't know. It basically makes it very structured, very rigidly structured to be played in a specific way. And there's no ambushing, always one enemy every single time. Having your snake body or guess your snake configuration be shared and be seen kind of moves a uniqueness behind it. I feel like it's just very sterile, I guess that's the word I want to say. Either way, it seems like it's definitely, the DMing is just not shaping up to what you expect it to be, basically. Session 3 was the breaking point. We've blown up a body horror monster factory and its mad scientist crew the session before, and we're prepping for the trip to Luna, but Rick Sanches was nowhere to be found. The players smirked and said you have to go find him, and the DM wouldn't let us progress until we've done so. So we pinged his location, his cabin, and went to collect him. Upon opening the door, the player grinned. You find me curled up on my cot, horribly drunk and crying inconsolably. My father was one of the scientists we invented, Morty, still crying. I roll over to face you. In my arms, you can see a half-empty bottle of spirits and a block of C4. All 3 of us turned to the DM and said we weren't going anywhere with this guy. In and out of character, we listed the myriad reasons why a depressed drunkard with a C4 was not a good guy to hang around with on the space station. Wanted to haul him to the brig immediately. The player protested. It's what he would do. He is upset, Morty. The DM shrugged and said it wouldn't be fair to the player to leave Rick behind. So we rolled our eyes, told him he needed to work with us rather than against us, and went along with it for the rest of the session. Then we all independently quit before the next session. It's one thing to work with a party, but you gotta make a character that's gonna work best and well with the party. If the player refuses to work with the party just to be like a nuisance, basically, which what the player is basically doing, there's no point for them to be a drunk, depressed slob with a C4. There's no point for it. It doesn't benefit the party in any way. I mean, yeah, roleplay is roleplay. If you want to roleplay a character as Rick Sanches or something, be my guest. But if you're doing something that's gonna be just literally ruining everybody else's fun, it's just not that fun. And for the DM to not see a problem, I feel like this game was cooked way before this instance. It was cooked from day one, honestly. I'm glad you guys left. Maybe you could try it again in the future without a Rick Sanches and a very dull DM. Anyway, next story. DM tried to kill my character in the first session while letting the rogue do whatever he wanted. I'm a long-time DM, and as such I don't get to play very often. So after posting on Discord about wanting to play, I joined an online group. There was Paladin, me, a rogue, and a wizard. The DM sent us off to a couple of simple quests, kill some wolves and try to steal back an item from some harpies. At first, everything is going fine. We travel through the woods, find the wolves, and roll initiative. This is where it starts to go bad. Wizard and I both rolled okay initiative. Rogue rolled a natural 20. DM tells Rogue he can have 2 full turns during a surprise round before we start initiative, because of his nat 20. So the Rogue, level 3 assassin, charges in, and the DM grants him sneak attack on every hit, which is an auto crit because of the surprise round and assassinate. So Rogue just goes crazy, killing off like 5 of the wolves during his 2 free turns. Then initiative starts, and everything kind of proceeds smoothly, even though over half the wolves were dead at this point. Damn, that's a very generous DM when it comes to sneak attack and surprise rounds. I don't think I've ever been this generous. I mean, I've given my players a surprise round for sure, especially if they're planned out. Gotta reward them, but 2 straight turns for 20 on initiative? Very generous. Then we headed over to the Harpy quest. The DM informed us that the Harpies weren't evil, so we didn't have to kill them. Just try to get back the item that it's stolen. The Harpy's nest was in an abandoned building on the side of a cliff with a 100-foot drop into crashing waves below. There was a small pathway leading through a cave that we could use to approach the Harpies. The rogue charges ahead, making a single stealth check to move around 100 or so feet towards the Harpies. Both the wizard and I stayed back, Rogue's orders, until he was far enough ahead. I then tried to move quietly, rolling a stealth check at disadvantage. To my dismay, I rolled 2 nat 1s. The DM informed me that the sound of my chainmail armor clanking alerted the Harpies to my presence, and they were now pissed. Cue initiative rolls. I rolled less than the Harpies, so they got to act before me, or the wizard, while the rogue continued to creep towards them. The Harpies hit me with their luring song, which somehow was the only one that had to make the saving throw, despite the text saying that every creature in 300-foot radius and the wizard standing 10 feet from me. Yeah, I actually ran that just recently with Harpies. They do have that insane radius for that song. That should have affected everybody, including the rogue and wizard. If you guys like 100 feet away from the Harpies and you make a little bit of a noise, I doubt some Harpies would really care about. If it's that far away, I think Harpies would just chill. I don't know, like maybe my scale and difference is a little bit off, but I don't know, man. Something feels a little bit off. It feels like you're being maybe picked on. I don't know. It feels like you're being picked on because you're 100 feet away. How can the Harpies really hear it unless the cave echoes for forever and amplifies the voice in some way? It's an echo amphitheater suddenly, and you're the only one that has to make the save against this song? Kinda sucky, honestly. I, of course, failed the save. I'm now charmed by the Harpies. One of the Harpies picks me up and drags me off the cliff, holding me some 100 feet over the open water and crushing waves. If they drop me, I am dead. The fall would drop me to 0 since no one can save me. That's it for my character. On the rogue's turn, he moves some 60 feet into the Harpy's nest, searches for the item, finds a locked chest, and is able to unlock the chest, pick up the item, and move out of the house and some 60 feet away, not making a single stealth check or even a roll to pick the lock. All this is done while we're still in initiative. If you guys are level 3, I mean, 60 feet to like dash and then cunning action, no, bonus action, cunning action to also dash, I guess makes sense. It wasn't an action to grab the thing or pick the lock or anything, just a free action. This rogue is eating good with the DM, dude. I don't know what's going on. I feel like this DM just really likes the rogue and wants to do stuff to just make him seem as, oh, you're my favorite rogue. If I had to wager a guess, I feel like the DM is playing favorites with the rogue. Not only are they letting him have 2 turns for the surprise round, but they also let him sneak up to 100 feet towards a place. They don't get to spotted by the Harpies or anything. gonna have to re-roll the stealth checks, get to dash, and then bonus action dash with cunning action, and then also free action, unlock stuff and grab it and go. Man, the rogue is eating good in this campaign. The paladin is the one suffering. Wizard's turn. He attempts to talk to the harpies, but they're angry because I made noise, apparently, since it's literally all that's happened. Wizard and harpies argue back and forth for several minutes about releasing me and letting us leave. DM skips my turn since I can't do anything, despite the fact I should have gotten a chance to save from charm. Rogue then gets to move super speed again, back through the cave towards us, where he walks out and tries to calm the harpies by talking to them. Not once did the rogue have to roll persuasion checks or anything, he just gets to do it. After a bit of back and forth, and more than one threat to simply drop me for disturbing them, the rogue is forced to give up his bag of holding, which he had just purchased at the start of the session, to appease the harpies, after forcing me to agree to repay him the price he paid for the bag, otherwise they would just leave me there. The harpies released me and flew away. We're out of there. Once we were back in town, the session came to an end, and I left the party, telling the DM I won't be back. As far as I know, no one in the group had known each other before we started playing. This is our first session together and my only session with the group. Any attempt I made to try and tell the DM to skip my turn or didn't let me make a save was ignored, and I was berated by the other two players for pissing off the harpies, when again, literally all I did was take a few steps forward and made noise. You know, there's something you said throughout this paragraph, so a couple of paragraphs, that specifically point me to my hunch of rogue being the favorite correct. They started off with a bag of holding. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with starting off with a bag of holding. Most artificers, when they get to level 3, typically have a bag of holding in my campaign because it's a convenient item to have, and they have feature for replicating magical items, so it's like part of the feature to do. If they have a bag of holding at level 3 immediately with no preconception or no like pre-design whatsoever, I feel like they were given the bag of holding ahead of time just to be their favorites. It wasn't given to the wizard or to you, it was given specifically to the rogue, and I can't believe we didn't mention that until now, unless you guys were able to pick out some magical items from the very beginning to kind of pick and choose what kind of things you can start with. That could be a possibility. But with how generous the DM is being with the rogue, with all the surprise rounds, 2 turns for that, no need to roll specific things, just gets to roll stealth and persuasion without actual rolling, just get to succeed for the sake of succeeding. I feel like you're playing with somebody that already has like a friend group, and these guys probably know each other ahead of time. You just kind of like a fill-in, you know, you kind of just like filling in a role, filling in a spot for their sessions or whatever. I don't know, but the rogue feels very main protagonist that is being upheld on a pedestal. And that's the kind of combination you don't really want to have when you have a main protagonist character and the DM enforcing that. It's just a disaster. It just makes it so that nobody can do anything in a campaign. I'm pretty sure the wizard didn't get to do anything at all. Anyway, it sounds like a bullet dodge. You didn't have to spend the entire campaign playing this nonsense, and I'm glad for you. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.